I'm still reeling from the phone call, even now, months later. But I have to tell you how it all started, because you won't believe the unbelievable way the truth finally came out. I mean, here I am, thinking my life is rock solid, 2 kids grown, mortgage almost paid, 27 years of marriage under my belt, and then, in one 10-second conversation, my entire reality shatters into a million pieces. The moment that call came through, everything froze. My son, Michael, my eldest, who's a commercial pilot for a major international airline, was on the line, sounding absolutely frantic. The kind of frantic that makes your blood run cold. He didn't even say hello. He just spat out, "Dad, you are not going to believe this. It's impossible. She is on my flight. She is sitting in 3A right now, and she is not flying home. She is flying to Paris. You told me she was home watching the dog. Dad, she's not at home. She's on my flight, and she's not alone." Was I wrong to secretly track her movements after that, and use that information to execute the most precise, cold-blooded revenge? Tell me honestly if you would have done the same thing, because I have been wrestling with the morality of it ever since. To understand the full, sick depth of this betrayal, you have to go back to the beginning of the end, which, for me, was about 6 months before that fateful flight. My wife, Sarah, and I, we had built a life that most people would call successful. We met in college, 2 starry-eyed kids who thought they could conquer the world. We married young, raised 2 fantastic children, Michael, the pilot, and our daughter, Emily, who's an architect, and we'd spent the last decade enjoying the quiet, comfortable ease that comes after. The hardest years of child-rearing are over. Our relationship wasn't passionate fire anymore, but it was a warm, comforting hearth. We were partners, best friends, and the foundation of our family, or so I believed. Sarah, who had worked part-time as a financial consultant for years, suddenly found herself with an immense workload. She started traveling. First, it was just weekend conferences in nearby cities, but then they stretched to 3 or 4 days, often involving transcontinental flights. I didn't question it. Why would I? Sarah was meticulous, organized, and she had always been completely transparent about everything. She'd leave little notes, schedule the dog walker, and call me every single night, telling me about the spreadsheets and the clients. I'd kiss her goodbye, tell her to crush her presentation, and go back to my own life, which involved my engineering firm and my golf game. The lies, however, started subtle, little ripples in the water that I dismissed as stress. She'd be vague about who she was meeting. Once, I asked her for the name of the hotel so I could send flowers, and she snapped, saying it was a huge corporate block booking and it would just confuse things. Another time, she accidentally left her work phone at home, and when I tried to look up the flight details to check her arrival time, the screen was locked with a password I didn't know. The previous password had always been our anniversary date. I mentioned it casually, and she just laughed it off, saying, "Oh, work changed the security policy, darling. You know how those corporate drones are." I remember feeling a tiny, cold flicker of unease, but I immediately stamped it out. I told myself I was being paranoid, the ridiculous, jealous husband from a bad sitcom. This was Sarah, my Sarah, the woman who'd held my hand through my father's funeral and packed my lunch every day for 20 years. You don't just start lying after all that time. You don't. The most frequent destination was always Seattle, or sometimes Chicago, and she always booked herself on the cheapest, most inconvenient flights, she said, to save the company money. I always admired her frugality. She claimed she would spend hours on comparison sites to find the least expensive tickets. The sheer effort she put into maintaining the facade is what makes my stomach clench even now. Meanwhile, Michael, our son, had been working his way up. He was now co-piloting long-haul routes, mostly to Europe and Asia. He rarely flew domestic routes and almost never worked the Seattle to Chicago hop Sarah claimed to be on constantly. We kept in touch mainly through texts because his schedule was brutal. He would call us when he was on the ground, usually from some exotic locale, telling us about the heat in Dubai or the time difference in Tokyo. It was during one of Sarah's supposed 4-day trips to a client summit in Chicago that Michael happened to be home for a rare 48-hour layover. I mentioned that Sarah was traveling, and Michael said, "It's good she's working hard, Dad, but you need a break. Let's go watch the game at O'Malley's." So we went. We were sitting there, beers in hand, discussing the impossibility of the quarterback making a comeback, when my phone rang. It was Sarah. She sounded tired, stressed, and completely believable. "Hey, honey, just wrapped up the dinner presentation. It was a killer. I miss you. Talk tomorrow." She told me she was back in her hotel room in downtown Chicago, ordering room service and falling asleep early. I relayed the conversation to Michael, and he nodded, taking a sip of his beer. "Mom's a powerhouse. Tell her I said hi when she gets back." Fast forward 2 weeks. Sarah was gone again, this time allegedly meeting with a different, very high-profile client in San Francisco. I had completely believed the narrative that her career was skyrocketing. I was proud, actually. I was bragging to my friends about how busy and successful my wife was. Michael was scheduled for a flight that day, heading from JFK in New York to Paris, CDG. He had texted me earlier saying he was on the runway, about to take off. I was in my home office, scrolling through emails, trying to figure out dinner, when the phone rang again. It wasn't the usual pilot number. It was Michael's personal cell. I answered casually, expecting him to be asking about the dog's special food or something. That's when the bomb dropped. His voice was tight, low, and completely unrecognizable. "Dad, listen to me. I'm telling you this is crazy. I'm up in the cockpit, but my first officer just pointed something out to me. One of the flight attendants came up and said, 'Michael, your mother is on this flight, and she's in 3A. She was talking to the lady in 3B about her trip.' We pulled up the manifest to confirm the name because, you know, we have the records. Dad, her name is right there, S. Johnson. She's listed as traveling with a Mr. C. Miller in 3B, and they're flying to Paris." My mind couldn't process the words. Sarah, Paris, C. Miller, and the manifest. I looked at the calendar on my desk. She had told me she was in a mandatory all-day workshop in San Francisco. San Francisco, not New York, not Paris. The geographical and temporal impossibilities of the situation hit me first, even before the emotional devastation. I kept saying, "No, Michael, you've got the wrong Sarah Johnson. It's a common name. She's on the West Coast right now. She called me from her hotel room last night." Michael cut me off. "Dad," I looked at her. I walked past, and I looked right at her. "It's Mom. She's wearing the blue scarf you bought her for Christmas, and she looks really happy. And that guy next to her, Miller, he has his hand on her arm. Dad, I am about to take off. We're taxiing. We're going to Paris." I could hear the roar of the engines in the background, a sound that now just screams betrayal in my memory. We disconnected just as the plane accelerated down the runway. I sat there in silence for what felt like an eternity, the dial tone ringing in my ear, staring blankly at the wall where a framed photo of Sarah and me on our 25th anniversary sat smiling. The realization hit me with the physical force of a punch to the gut. The business trips, the vague explanations, the locked phone, it all clicked into place, forming a perfectly monstrous picture. She wasn't just having an affair. She was maintaining a completely separate, secret life on another continent, and using her own son's profession as the instrument of her undoing. The audacity, the calculated cruelty of flying halfway across the world with this man while I was home watching the dog, was breathtaking. I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I became eerily, terrifyingly calm. I decided then and there that I wouldn't confront her when she landed. I wouldn't call her, and I wouldn't even let her know that the web she had so meticulously spun had snagged her own son's plane. I had to know everything. I needed the evidence, not for a divorce lawyer, but for my own sanity, and for the cold, clean satisfaction of knowing I was operating from a place of unassailable truth. That's when I did something I never thought I would do. I found her laptop. I tried every possible password related to our life, but of course, none worked. Then, a chilling thought struck me. The new password might be related to him. I typed in a combination I would have laughed at an hour ago. C. Miller's birthday, which I had to look up on LinkedIn, where she was inexplicably connected to him. It worked. The laptop unlocked, revealing a dedicated folder titled Paris. Inside were flight itineraries, hotel confirmations, and, most damningly, a series of saccharine, love-struck emails exchanged between Sarah and Chris. The email subject lines alone made me feel like I was going to vomit. Things like, counting the minutes until CDG, and our secret world. It was all there. Her trips to Chicago and Seattle. Always connecting flights that got her to JFK or Boston, where she would meet Chris, a colleague from a competitor firm, before they jetted off to Europe for their client summits. So that's the situation I was in. My wife, the mother of my children, was on a flight to Paris, sleeping in business class next to her lover, while I sat at home staring at the damning evidence, feeling like the biggest fool on the planet. I had the truth, but I hadn't deployed it yet. I had the knowledge, but I was still, technically, the oblivious husband. Before I tell you what happened next, what final move I executed to end the marriage and claim back my dignity, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have called her on the plane? Would you have waited for her to land and met her at the airport with divorce papers? Or would you have played a long, slow game of calculated revenge? Let me know, because my blood was boiling, but my brain was calculating, and I opted for the path of maximum damage and minimum emotional exposure for myself. I didn't call her, I didn't text her, I waited. The first thing I did was call my lawyer, a man I'd played golf with for 10 years, and told him everything. He listened in stunned silence. I instructed him to immediately file an injunction freezing half of our joint assets, and to draw up the most ironclad, non-negotiable divorce papers possible, citing the email evidence and the documented travel expenses for infidelity. Then came the second, and arguably, most satisfying part of the revenge. I knew Sarah was supposed to return 4 days later, landing at 4:30 p.m. I drove to the airport, not to the arrival gate, but to a quiet parking lot where I could see the terminal entrance. I didn't go to meet her, I went to meet her. I stayed in my car, sunglasses on, and watched. Precisely on schedule, Sarah walked out, looking radiant and rested, carrying a new designer handbag I didn't recognize. She wasn't alone. Chris Miller, the man from 3B, was right beside her. They weren't holding hands, but the intimacy in their posture was undeniable. They stopped just outside the sliding doors, shared a long, lingering, and frankly sickening kiss goodbye. And then Chris hailed a cab while Sarah went to the parking garage to retrieve her car, the one I had meticulously cleaned before she left. I let her get home first. I wanted the confrontation to happen in the house we built together, the house she had systematically defiled with her lies. She walked in, chirpy and smiling, tossing her keys onto the hall table. I'm home, darling. The summit was a huge success, but I am exhausted. She started toward me for a hug, but I held up a hand. Don't. The single word stopped her dead. Her smile evaporated. She must have sensed the Arctic cold in my voice. What is it? She asked, her voice faltering. I didn't yell. I didn't shout. I just held up her laptop, which I had opened to the Paris A folder, displaying the email where she had signed off, yours forever, my darling Chris. I simply said, Paris, 3A, the flight Michael was piloting. The color drained from her face. She collapsed onto the sofa, completely speechless. She tried to stammer out an explanation about how it was just business, a fluke, a mistake, but I cut her off. I had rehearsed this moment for 4 days, and I wasn't going to let her rewrite the script. It wasn't a fluke, Sarah. It was a planned, long-term affair involving hundreds of thousands of dollars in hidden travel expenses, which I have documented. Your son, Michael, saw you. He saw you board the flight, and he saw you with Miller. The entire family knows you were lying. I haven't told them why yet, but they know the business trips were a lie because I called your sister and asked about her illness that you were supposedly tending to in Seattle. That last part was a slight exaggeration, but the effect was devastating. I've filed for divorce. The papers are on the kitchen counter. I want you out of this house in 24 hours. The accounts are frozen. Your entire, carefully constructed lie is over. She wept, she pleaded, she tried to manipulate me with memories of our past, but I was stone. The sight of her devastation was less satisfying than I thought it would be. It was just empty. It was the realization that I had wasted 27 years on a person I didn't actually know. The aftermath was painful, drawn out, but ultimately necessary. Michael, who was furious and deeply hurt, offered me unwavering support. He was the one who confirmed to Emily that the divorce was Sarah's fault. Emily was devastated, but eventually sided with us. Unable to reconcile the sweet, loving mother she knew with the cold, calculating liar we had discovered, Sarah tried to fight the divorce, bringing up ludicrous claims about my own supposed neglect. But the evidence, the travel documents, the emails, and the financial paper trail I had meticulously uncovered made her case impossible. She walked away with a fraction of what she wanted, solely because of her documented, prolonged financial deception to fund the affair. I changed the locks on the house, changed all my passwords, and slowly, painfully, began to put my life back together. I am now officially divorced, and the silence in the house is immense, but it is an honest silence. It is not filled with the ghosts of transatlantic lies and fake Chicago dinners. It's my space now. And I am finally, truly alone, but also free. The whole episode taught me that the truth always finds a way, sometimes on a flight manifest co-piloted by your own son. It's the kind of cruel, cosmic irony that belongs in a movie, and yet it was my life. The biggest lesson I took from this nightmare is that when you have proof, you don't need a shouting match. Clarity is far more powerful than chaos. I reclaimed my peace by choosing cold, precise action over emotional reaction, and while it hurt like hell, it meant I dictated the terms of the end, not her. Like this video, if you were on my side, supporting my decision to move quickly and decisively to end the marriage and expose the deception. Subscribe for more stories like this one, because honestly, I think everyone needs to hear a story about how a pilot's schedule can accidentally turn into the truth serum of a lifetime. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below, especially if you've ever had a truth revealed to you in the most unexpected way. I'll see you all in the next story.